The bye-week mailbag went pretty well. In fact, there were many more questions than any reasonable word count could have allotted for. Then again, the internet is limitless, so clearly the constraint was not word count but rather time in this schedule. Fortunately, another week provides another late Friday afternoon opportunity to put off work, ponder pointless items and do the mental math of just how much longer until 7:42 p.m. ET on Saturday. As of this posting, exactly 27 hours, 42 minutes. Another question came in completely unsolicited late this Tuesday, but it seems the right one to start with considering, again, it's a late Friday afternoon and the next item on your to-do list might be influenced by this discussion. Keith never offered Dan an answer, but he did ask a very necessary question. How hungover are you willing to be on Saturday? Keith Arnold at Keith Arnold, October 18, 2017. Since the NBC primetime slot will give Dan plenty of time to recover Saturday, he did not seem to think the headache tomorrow should be a mitigating concern tonight. Now, let's presume Dan has already done the campus tour, has plans of seeing the grotto after dusk and is not willing to wait 2 hours for good, but not so great it is worth waiting 2 hours for pizza. Instead, it is rather clear Dan has beverages on his mind. There are the obvious nominations. The backer is a Notre Dame staple and the location most often referenced in national lists or features. Corby's claims a cameo in Rudy, even if that was at a different location. Younger alums swear by Blarney Stone, colloquially known as Finney's, which has led to some confusion with the newer option in town named Finney's. All of these, though, present a steep hurdle to Dan's seeming intent. The bartender-to-patron ratio is far too low. Even if not looking for a distinct number of drinks, the aggravation of waiting for a drink defeats much of the intended purpose of the drink in the first place. Closer-to-campus options may not present the tradition, specials or grime of some of the longer-held staples, but they do adequately staff up for game weekends, and that is all too often an overlooked aspect of finding a good evening. USC topped the Irish in the return of night games at Notre Dame Stadium in 2011, also the only defeat following a bye week in Coach Brian Kelly's Irish tenure. Photo by Jonathan Daniel. Getty Images. When Notre Dame first rekindled these night games for USC's 2011 visit, it was not yet clear playing under the lights would become an annual or even biannual occurrence. That alone spiked both the demand for the tickets and the number of Friday night arrivals. When visiting a town, people tend to head to the intended establishments earlier. Why spend that time in the hotel room, after all? Thus, when the then seniors finished their weekly preparations and set out for their usual locations, those spots were already filled by alums, Subway alums and a third of Chicago. The scramble to find somewhere more than 4 people could get into would have been comical if it did not seem so dire at the time. The found answer was a basement bar, usually popular only once a week. This solution worked great, for only one drink. There was but one bartender. She never stood a chance serving 200 college seniors. Not a single one of them got a second drink there. That may be more in the category of vague advice than an outright answer to Dan's question, but it should at least be a step in the direction. Hey Doug, do you know ND's record after a bye week under Brian Kelly? Would be interesting to see if there's a history of coming out flat. Captain Calzone in Kelly's 7 seasons at Notre Dame, the Irish are 81 coming off bye weeks, the only loss coming in the aforementioned crowded night game, often referred to as the Crazy Train game. 2010 W283V. Number 15 Utah 2011 L1731V. USC 2012 W413V. Miami 2013 W1410V. USC W2313V. BYU 2014 W3115 at Syracuse. W4939 at Navy. 2015 W2420 at number 21 Temple. 2016 W3027V. Miami. Another commenter responded to this inquiry, with doubts about any validity to presumptions drawn from the 81 record. Yes, a new coaching staff may have different rhythms than Kelly's previous assistants, but the overall tendencies of the week likely remain intact. Does this mean the Irish will win tomorrow? No, but it is another advantage in their favor, especially since USC will not have a bye week this season until the regular season is complete. Notre Dame should be fresh tomorrow. The Trojans are coming off a tough 1-point victory over Utah, their 6th Power 5 opponent in 6 weeks. On that note, let's compliment USC's schedule. The only non-Power 5 foe is Western Michigan. The Broncos may not be the same test as they were last year, but that is still a stiff slate for the Trojans. Bookmakers offering odds of 501 for Irish National Championship. Odds will be different after our next game. Weigh 73. I suppose that isn't technically a question. Whatever. It included a 4-letter word that will always draw attention around here. It may be surprising to see Notre Dame's odds that high. Auburn, LSU and South Florida all have the same odds. The first two of those have 2 losses already and each still away to date with Alabama. South Florida should reach its season finale 110. If the Bulls can then get past Central Florida, also undefeated to date, and either Memphis or Navy in the American Athletic Conference title game, it is still hard to envision them being given a spot in the college football playoff. The Irish being on the same level with those teams is a reflection of their schedule more than anything else. The bookmakers are essentially saying a 6-game parlay of Notre Dame beating USC, North Carolina State, Miami, Florida, Stanford, a semifinal opponent, and Alabama would pay at 50-1. Looking at it from that perspective, those 50-1 odds are remarkably low. Even conservative estimates of future lines would peg that 6-game parlay at something more akin to 87-1. If the Irish beat USC tomorrow, those odds may drop, but they won't drop all that much. The subsequent proposed 5-game parlay following such a victory would be valued at 53-1 or so. The 50-1 status is a suitable placeholder until fewer teams are in national title contention. Let's make this simple. North Carolina State and Jalen Samuels are really good at the football thing. Photo by Justin Brill. Getty Images. It should be mentioned, North Carolina State also comes in with 50-1 odds. Again, that is a nod to the Wolfpack schedule. In addition to visiting Notre Dame next weekend, North Carolina State still has to host Clemson and, theoretically, face an ACC title game foe, quite possibly Miami. For that matter, the Wolfpack will likely be an underdog in all 3 of those games, not to mention the following 2 playoff games in this scenario. Look, people, Syracuse put up 25 points on NC State 25. NC State won that game 3,325. Marshall put up 20. It'll stop now. 25K gold. Underestimate North Carolina State at your own peril. This space has been predicting the Irish would lose to the Wolfpack since before the season, and it would take quite a performance against USC tomorrow to change that stance. The Orange just beat Clemson 2,724 and averaged 31.3 points per game. The Thundering Herd averaged 26.5 points per game, and that is boosted by jumping out to that 2010 lead over North Carolina State back on September 9. Of course, the Wolfpack then scored 27 unanswered points. What is the status of freshman kickoff specialist Jonathan Doerer? No complaints about how Yoon was kicking touchbacks last game, but I know Doerer was given a scholarship in order to keep Yoon's leg fresh for field goals. ND 1975 FLA. Doerer was indeed recruited for that purpose, but 2 aspects seem to have junior kicker Justin Yoon continuing to handle kickoffs as he will again tomorrow. Doerer struggled to keep the ball in bounds, a costly penalty. Perhaps that got to his head, or perhaps Notre Dame coaching staff simply doesn't trust him. Either way, it was an issue. On top of that, some of Yoon's fatigue last season has been attributed to an injury of some variety. If healthy throughout this year, he should be able to handle the entire workload. I think we could classify the first part of the season as a success, taking everything one step at a time. We now come to the second part. This looks like a different schedule than in the beginning of the year, with number 11, number 16, a 42 Wake Forest, number 8, Navy and the Tripoli option, and number 22. Best case scenario, win them all. Are the Irish in the playoffs? Democurish, yes. For this exercise, let's presume the not yet existing college football playoff poll would be similar to the AP Top 25. At number 13 right now, Notre Dame would need to move up 9 spots in the polls. 2 of those come courtesy of knocking off USC and Miami, both ahead of the Irish. 7 to go. Only one of the Big 12's Oklahoma, Oklahoma State and TCU will remain ahead. 5 to go. At most, 2 of the 3 Big Ten possibilities will end the season as playoff considerations. Either Ohio State runs the table and is Penn State's only loss, or Wisconsin beats Penn State and both stay in the conversation. Either scenario removes a concern from Notre Dame's checklist. Mere attrition does not guarantee anything further than that. Schedule strength, however, does. If the Irish finish the season with that streak of wins, their resume would dwarf anything from the Big 12 or the Big 10. Worst case scenario, lose them all. Does this board and the rest change their tune on Brian Kelly? Does Irish football even exist after November 25? Still, Democurish, a 57 finish would likely be a death knell for Kelly's tenure, but Notre Dame football will continue. Be assured of that. Middle road, win some and lose some. What is the number needed to maintain this feeling of success? Dimitrish's conclusion: that is a question better answered in person with qualifiers and conditional statements, a bevy of if, might, maybe and but, and a drink. Just make sure you don't spend so long waiting for the drink the question is forgotten before even answered.